On to Chapter 3, Leadership and Supervision. And it goes without saying that leadership is an important aspect of many professions, not just the fire service alone. And when we're thinking about leadership and supervision, there's really three key terms in this chapter that are similar but different that we need to wrap our brain around to be an effective leader. So first, let's look at the definition of a leader. A leader is a person who leads or directs a unit. Again, a leader is a person who leads or directs a unit. Manager is an individual who accomplishes organizational objectives through effective and efficient handling of material and human resources. Again, a manager is an individual who accomplishes organizational objectives through effective and efficient handling of materials and human resources. And then the last term is supervisor or supervision. And a supervisor is a person who is responsible for directing the performance of other people or employees. So again, they're very close together, but they're different. So it's important to wrap your brain around each of those terms and the associated material with each. So that's kind of the gist of this chapter and what we're going to focus on today. Now, it's important to note that there are many different opinions on each of these three subjects. So as an officer or a leader of any organization, you need to become accustomed to all these different theories because no one style will fit every situation or every incident. So you need to be adverse in all the different thoughts and theories so you can pick the best one to address and use during any given situation. Objective number 1. Explain the principles of leadership as applied to the company officer. Okay, here's a list of some common leadership traits that are most effective when used in combination. And again, as I said earlier, no one specific trait will work for every situation. Traits are best used in combination that best serve effective leadership. Now, this includes all the following here, and we'll talk a little bit about each. First, supervisory ability, and that has to do with planning, organizing, directing, and controlling to coordinate efforts of the unit to accomplish the objectives. So essentially, plan out the day, figure out what's going to need to happen or on an emergency scene, and get to it. Next is decisiveness, making decisions quickly and effectively. And as the old adage says, a wrong decision is better than no decision. And on an emergency scene, we have to make a very quick and decisive decision. Now, there are other instances where decisiveness, in terms of making decisions quickly, is not necessarily a good thing, and you need to kind of step back and get all the facts and figures first, kind of like a hazardous material scene. That is one instance where you need to figure out exactly what you're dealing with before you start running in and doing things. And the same can be said with human resource issues. Next, we have intelligence, and that is using logic and reason in making decisions. And also in that, also like throwing a little common sense also goes a long way with intelligence. So again, as a company officer, you need to be adversed in new trends and ideas and studies in terms of the practice of the science of firefighting or fire science. Another good trait, self-assurance, which is demonstrating self-confidence when making a decision. And this is kind of leaning more toward like that command presence. You know, irregard of what's going on scene, you exude confidence. You have this demeanor or manner about you that, hey, you've seen this before, you know what's going on, and we're going to take care of it. Now, in reality, it can be one of those situations where it's like the duck or the swan on the lake. You know, you see a duck or swan paddling across the lake, and it's very peaceful and tranquil, very majestic on the outside, as is seen to everyone else. But if you look underneath the water, what do you see? You see the little feet paddling like crazy. So on the inside, you can be paddling like crazy, like, oh my God, but you're exuding confidence. You have that command presence, that self-assurance going on. Next, we have initiative, and that's accomplishing goals and objectives with a minimum of supervision. So that's basically kind of taking it upon yourself to get things done that you know are coming down the pipe, so to speak, and not waiting to be told by somebody else. And that could be something as simple as, oh, I know evaluations are due, so I'm going to go ahead and get started, or pre-plans, station duties, whatever the case may be. Now, the next one should go without saying, integrity. And whether you're a supervisor, firefighter, a driver, wherever the case may be, in our profession, you need to have integrity. And that is applying consistently a set of morals or values to the decision-making progress. And it's kind of interesting, if you ask people what is integrity, you're going to get a whole lot of different definitions. So around the station or whatnot, feel free, ask a few people, what do you think integrity is? We actually, when I was in charge of a hiring process, that was one of our interview questions. What does integrity mean to you? Next, we have personal security, and that's just being secure in the leadership position. Again, that kind of falls back to that command presence. Hey, I'm the boss, I'm in charge, I'm going to make decisions, and I'm going to get things done. Sense priority is another big one, which is determining an effective order of action to achieve a desired outcome. So you got to be organized. You have to set your priorities. Okay, we need to do A, B, and C in this order. Or if we can't do A, we need to do B, C, and D. Basically, it's being organized and getting the job done. Next, vision. And this is basically having a dream or a concept of the way things can or should be. And that kind of goes along with vision and mission statements. So it's always good as a supervisor or a leader to tell the people underneath you, okay, this is my plan, this is my vision, this is where I want to see us being, whether it be a proficient group like pulling hoses or doing direct attack or search and rescue, whatever your vision for the unit is, make sure that, everybody's aware of it and you get buy-in. And that's really one of the key things in leadership, is being able to motivate people underneath you to get the job done quickly, effectively, and of course, safely. Right? Our next term, industriousness, which is working hard to fulfill duties. Another important skill is your interpersonal skills, and this kind of goes with human resource side of things. And FDR once said, the secret to success is knowing how to get along with people. And that can be said a lot in the company officer position. So successfully working with others to accomplish tasks is that interpersonal skill. Now, you can come across totally each end of the dichotomy between good and evil, so to speak, when you're trying to get things done. So it's how you ask in that tone. For example, getting somebody to do something on scene. Well, yes, you're in charge. You can tell them, okay, we're done with training. Can you go pick up that 5-inch hose? But the manner at which you ask it can be interpreted so many different ways by the crew. Maybe acknowledge, hey guys, I know we had a busy day and we've got a lot to do and we're all tired, but we really got to get this done because X, Y, and Z, and I would really appreciate it if you guys could get this knocked out for us or for me while I go do this or do that or whatever the case may be. So, have empathy, have that human resource, or not human resource, human relation aspect to get things done. Next is empowerment, which is providing support for others to succeed in accomplishing organizational and personal goals. And this is really good in the sense that what you're doing is you're empowering others underneath you to get a job done or a task. Now, you're giving them essentially the authority to do something, but yet ultimately the responsibility for it getting done falls on you. But empower people underneath you to get things done, because as a company officer, you can't be expected to do everything yourself. Because if you do that, you're not going to get it all done, or either you're going to get it all done, but it's going to be done, excuse the expression, half blank, blank, blank. So empower others to get things done. Innovation and creativity. This is a big one, which is seeking continually new and imaginative methods for accomplishing the mission of the organization. So maybe it's changing up training to something a little different, or finding a more effective way to get things done. The more creative you are in doing certain tasks, the more buy-in you'll get from the folks, and the less grumble in terms of morale. Maybe it's changing up training or having somebody else teach a subject that's really boring, or wherever the case may be. Consistency. As a leader, you need to be consistent, which is applying procedures, policies, reward, and discipline evenly and fairly over time. If somebody screws up and they're late, well, anytime anybody else is late, you need to adhere to the same set of rules and policies and not make exceptions due to extenuating circumstances. Well, you wrote Bob up for being 15 minutes late because he had a flat tire. Well, you need to write up Susie for being 15 minutes late for dropping a kid off, or whatever the case may be. And it may be a little bit of an extreme example, but that's just a good illustration on how to be consistent, because if you're not consistent, you'll get resentment in the ranks. Next, we have preparedness, which is being ready for potential situations. Always have a plan B, C, and D. Have what ifs in mind. Be thinking about things. Okay, what do I need to get done today? If this happens, then we'll get it done here, or wherever the case may be. But be prepared. Finally, we have proactiveness, and I honestly believe in the fire service a lot of times we're more reactive than proactive, but there are certain tendencies or trends that we can be proactive on. And proactive basically means anticipating, embracing, and meeting change. There's going to be times when you're going to be off and someone's going to have to ride seat for you. Maybe you're a driver or swing somebody in. So why not start preparing those people underneath you for that next role or responsibility after they've learned their current job? So we're writing 4 today, and we're going to let, the driver, your sergeant, FAO, whatever term you want to use, ride seat that day. Maybe you drive, or you let one of the junior firefighters drive if they're licensed and able to. And it's a way to have somebody watch them and do another job while still having that, lifeline, if you will, that phone a friend to watch them and help them feel confident in that position. Now, when we're looking at leadership skills, it's important to note that not everybody is, born with all these different traits and skills. So it's something that can be learned or developed. And the first step in developing leadership skills is study successful leaders and develop your own list of leadership traits. So we all know people that we admire in leadership positions. Well, hey, study them. What made them good? Or what did you admire about them? We've all had leaders, managers, supervisors in the past that we've liked and ones that we didn't like. So let's learn from these individuals and make a list on what we think are good and ones that we really want to develop and adopt and others that weren't so good and why they weren't so good. Make a list of your personal leadership traits. What are you good at and what do you need to work on? Look at individual differences, perceptions, personnel bias can influence this checklist. So you may need to get feedback from others on your traits because you see yourself one way and it's kind of a hard thing to do those true self-evaluations, and it may be something where you need to get anonymous surveys or look at peers or subordinates and say, hey, what do you think I need to work on? And this is something that can be very subjective, meaning very opinionated, and it may vary so between you and others. So to me, it's always a good idea to get multiple inputs from different people. So when you're doing this, do different methods, maybe a survey, customer satisfaction survey, or talk to people underneath you, do informal feedback. So allow what they call a 360-degree feedback, meaning what do your people think? Be open, listen to them, and adjust accordingly. Talk to your supervisors, and of course, talk to peers and friends. It is common to use a combination of these methods from all the interested parties to compile your results. Once the company officer has determined characteristics present and those lacking, develop a strategy for improving your weaker skills. And again, not all leaders are outstanding in all situations. So how are we going to improve our leadership skill ability? Well, there's all kind of things. Go to seminars, workshops, take courses, read books on leadership and literature, look toward counselors or mentors. There are all different ways to gain knowledge in these skills. And just be cognitive of them, seek them, and don't sit on your laurels and wait for the magic leadership skill fairy to knight you with these skills. Leadership traits may be summarized according to a variety of actions that most good leaders take. And what I mean by that are these key terms here. So let's run through them. So seeing opportunities, and this is having a vision that views situations from all angles while still understanding the tradition and can provide direction. Identify challenges, which is recognizing potential problematic situations ranging from personnel conflicts to political intrigue that may confront the work group, company, or unit. Recognition requires monitoring both the internal and external climate of the organization. Communicating Being able to express ideas clearly and being able to listen, keyword here, listen to and interpret feedback from others who are either internal or external to the organization. Planning for success. Generating plans, implementing them, and evaluating their effectiveness. Effective planning saves energy, time, and resources. It also helps limit frustration. Building trust. Creating an environment of mutual trust within the organization, community, and service area and profession. Understanding the system. Determine first what needs to be improved. Inspiring a shared vision, which is sharing a vision for your company's success with subordinates, ensuring it is in line with the organization mission statement. Notice how a lot of these trends keep overlapping and coming back into play because they're extremely important. Enable others to act, giving subordinates the tools and methods to solve the problems or make the change. Of course, modeling desired behavior, providing a good personal example, especially when work becomes more difficult. You may not agree with something, or you may not like it, but you're going to do it, and you're going to do it right. So be that example for the people to follow, whether it be wearing the gear protectively, not wearing your helmet with the chin strap off. Do what needs to be done, and don't be that person. Do as I say, not as I do. Encouraging subordinates. Sharing the glory with the people underneath you while keeping troubles to yourself. So encourage them, hey, this is going good, this is going great, and if there's a problem, well, you're not really going to be, slamming people. Oh, we got a bad evaluation, blah, blah, blah. Okay, gang, so we need a little work on XYZ, and this is our plan. And of course, again, establishing priorities. The top priority in the emergency response is this. The second priority, is emergency preparedness through training, planning, and maintenance. And your, third priority can be administration, including facility maintenance, documentation, etc. So again, have your priorities and your checklist in order. Command presence is the ability to identify the components of a situation, assess the need for action, determine the nature of the necessary interventions, initiate actions, and to be perceived as having the ability to take this action. Command presence inspires confidence from the subordinates, the administration, and the public. Effective fire and emergency leaders can have command presence in all their assigned emergency and non-emergency duties. To achieve command presence, it may be helpful to have or develop some of the following attributes. Self-confidence, trustworthiness, consistency, responsibility, acceptance, and expertise. Again, notice these key terms. They keep coming up, so make sure you have a good idea of each of them. And do you exude these? Do you have these? Or is this something you need to work on? Now, there are 8 steps to help you with this. Step 1, determine what the situation is. Step 2, know what resources are available to apply to the given situation. Step 3, develop the strategy and tactics required to resolve the situation. Step 4, listen to all point of view when appropriate. Again, when appropriate. Is it an emergency scene or non-emergency scene? Is it something that you can afford to have more of a democratic process, or do you have to be more authoritarian or like dictatorship? Step 5, make the decision. Don't wait for someone else to do it. You are the company officer. You are in charge. Make the decision, right or wrong. Then implement the decision and evaluate the decision and modify as necessary. So let's say what you're doing is not quite working and you figure that out, you evaluate it, guess what? You can change, do something else. Maybe it's a case where you decide to do a offensive attack and things get too hot or situations get too dangerous and you pull back and go defensive. Nothing says you have to stick with a plan. Or vice versa. Maybe you decide to wait to be more of a defensive fire attack to get more resources on scene. And then of course, step 8, take responsibility for the decision. Yes, I made a decision. Yes, I made a mistake. I am sorry. Forgive me. I made the wrong decision. These things happen. I'll do better next time. So don't blame others for the decision. And we live in a society in this day and age where it seems that we're always trying to quote, pass the buck or the blame. Oh, it's not my fault if Bob would have pulled the line quicker, or if engine 2 would have got there quicker, this would have never happened. So take responsibility. Okay, some food for thought here. What are some other ways that you've seen people establish a command presence? And again, think back to other people that you've worked underneath, whether it be in public safety or private industry, and what made them a good leader. How did they have their command presence? And the military is great with this. For example, when the U.S. Army came in after Katrina. I forget the name of the commanding officer, but he stepped in, he met with the governor, he exuded this very great command presence. Okay, I understand the situation, and this is what we're going to do to get things back on track. So let's talk about ethics now, sometimes called moral philosophy. And ethics are basically the agreed upon physiological principles that define what is correct and proper behavior for the members of a society. Without ethics, there would be chaos and civilizations would dissolve. Basically, ethics define what is right and proper conduct for the individual in all relationships and activities. The conduct may involve relationship with others, the decision-making process, or simply choosing between what is right and what is wrong. Unfortunately, there's a gray area, which refers to, not all decisions are clear and may involve, many choices that fall between those two extremes. Now, ethics have played a major role in civilization. Unfortunately, examples of unethical conduct tend to appear more frequently in the news. The lack of ethical conduct may be the cause of some or all the following instances within the fire emergency services. And that could be such as borrowing and never returning. Such as I'm at the station and I'm really tight on money and I got no gas to get home till Friday, so I'm just gonna borrow some fuel from the gas can and I'll pay it back when I get paid, and you never do. Or you know what? Hey, it's a slow day. I'm going to use some of the truck polish and truck wash to wash my car. Maybe it's, borrowing toilet paper or whatever the case may be. So that can kind of be one of those gray areas. Other things, such as shopping for personal items during an inspection or pre-fire plan. Oh, hey, it's Christmas time, so let me, while we're pre-planning the Walmart, let me go ahead and pick up, little Timmy's, Christmas present. What about asking for discounts? And me personally, I never ask, and I work with individuals that have asked, hey, do you give a public safety discount? And to me, that's just wrong. You don't do that. Now, if they offer one, then okay. But maybe that's against your policy to take discounts. Another possibility could be using the station to conduct a private business or enterprise. So let's say that you run a detailing business on the side, and it's Sunday, so you get them to bring cars up there and leave them with you, or you drive them up there and you spend your entire Sunday where you're supposed to be working at the station, and now you're using station supplies to detail somebody else's vehicle on the county or department dime. So we can see, as a fire officer, you must understand the importance of ethical conduct and how to adhere to it. And in this section, it kind of deals with individual and organizational ethical conduct and issues that may come to light in the fire and emergency service. So when we look at ethical conduct, society tends to expect a higher level of ethical conduct from members of its emergency services. The public and the media are more likely to report unethical behavior of your emergency service members. Image of the organization may suffer because of one member. So even though you're not on duty, is it right to say wear a station t-shirt and go pick up a 12-pack of beer or a bottle of liquor in it? Is it, ethical to, drink and drive while off duty? And if you do get a DUI off duty, is that something that will cause you to lose your job over? And case in point, there was a fire chief, and I don't remember where this fire chief was, but he was off duty, and it was like a barbecue or something of that nature. But there was a picture on social media of him sitting behind the steering wheel of a car. The door was open, his feet was hanging out, holding a beer. And that made it to social media, and I guess people made a big stink over it. And this individual lost their job, and they were not in uniform. They weren't on duty because the supervision, the county manager or whatever, said that was conduct unbecoming. So even though you're not on duty, you have to adhere to this, ethical conduct at all times. So where do we get our ethics from? And primarily, you learn it at an early age from your family, right? This is acceptable, this is not, this is right, this is wrong. And then you have those secondary institutions of control, such as religious organizations, school, society as a whole, friends, and peers. So, throughout your entire life, you're being groomed, if you will, on what is right, what is wrong, what is acceptable, what is not. And it's important to note that there are different influences for everyone within the department. So as a company officer, to me, it's always important that, hey, you lay out what you feel is, right and wrong to the individuals underneath you, and let them take cues of it. So part of being a company officer, you should incorporate ethical values of not only yourself, but of the organization into your own set of personal ethics. Okay, some food for thought. What are some ethical values that are endorsed by the fire service organization? This could be stuff, like honesty, integrity, impartiality, and fairness. But think about this stuff And be prepared to quite possibly see a quiz or a essay question on a test about this. Hint, 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 cough, cough, cough. So when we're thinking about ethics, and there's that very simple three-step check when you're looking at ethics that they say to help decide something's ethical or not. And first being, is it legal? Will I be violating some sort of law, professional standard, or department policy? Next, is it fair to all concerned? Basically, have you based your decision on all the facts as you know them? And will the decision support the mission of the organization? And the third step basically is, how will it make me feel about myself? Will it make me proud? Will I feel good if my decision was published in the newspaper? Is it seen in social media? Is it, on, channel XYZ News? Would you feel good if your family knew about what you did? Now, to create an ethical culture within your unit, the fire officer must understand why or what contributes to unethical behavior. And this could be such things as violation of moral principles. So, for example, hiring or promoting based upon favoritism rather than merit. Cheating on promotional examinations, taking bribes to influence inspection on plan reviews, or misusing department equipment. Another cause is the bottom line mentality. So, for example, focusing on subscription receipts versus performing necessary firefighting, operations. Shortcut mentality. Failing to appropriately complete an overhaul because of dinner time or abbreviate training sessions to watch the football game. And then there's that exploitive mentality, such as engaging in sexual harassment, discriminating against personnel based upon their ethnicity, gender, age, or sexual preference, starting and or spreading rumors or taking credit for work of others. So these are all possible causes of unethical behavior. Now, lying is a very common unethical behavior. And there are four main reasons for lying, and the same reasons can describe most forms of unethical conduct on part of the individual. First, basic needs, which is gain objects that fulfill an individual's basic needs, such as food, money, clothing, or other items. Affiliation, which is creating prolonged or avoid social relationships such as hazing. You lie about it, you do hazing or whatever so you can fit in. And of course, self-esteem. Self-esteem, I think, is a big one that many people, especially in the fire service, do sometimes. And this is that increase the perceived competencies of an individual in the eyes of others, such as, cheating to get a higher score, spreading gossip about another person. So basically, you're making yourself look good. Then you have, self-gratification, and that increases an individual's personal employment, such as illegal gambling, substance abuse, and theft. So the four basic causes of lying are basic need, affiliation, self-esteem, and self-gratification. So, when people do unethical behavior, how do they live with themselves? And this is that personal justification. And the way we justify it to ourselves can be some of the following. And they justify it saying, oh, it's okay because it's really legal or ethical. They pretend it. Or they believe the action is in the best interest of the organization or individual. Another one is they believe the action is okay because, hey, you know what? No one will ever find out about it. Wrong. Expecting that the organization will support the action even if it's discovered. Oh, I leaked Bob because he's the best choice for promotion. I gave him the answers, and even if anybody finds out about it, the boss will go along with me. Another option is, hey, you know what? Everybody else is doing it. Why not me? And so I want my piece of the pie. And then, of course, believing that the end result justifies the means, even if the means are unethical. So when the individual has justified that unethical action internally, it is then easier to commit the action and any similar subsequent action. So, once you break the rules once and, quote, get away with it, hey, it's easier to do it again. So to overcome these attitudes, you as the officer must have a culture that encourages and rewards individuals for ethical conduct, and of course, not only reward ethical conduct, but also have the means to discipline unethical conduct as well. So a good way to ensure ethical behavior is to have an ethics program. And that essentially is a written code of ethics and ethical type policy. And it should be a brief 1 or 2 page statement of the organizational values, expected behavior, both of management and membership. And it should be specific to your organization. And it basically provides a visible standard for individuals to follow. And this provides the company officer with an idea of what is expected of them and their subordinates within their organization. And on page 63, there's a behavioral statement that will behoove you to look over and read. Now, the organization as a whole is responsible for the ethical culture that is going on. Meaning, if you see something, say something, and take care of it. Or your firefighters, you empower them to, hey, stand up and do what's right, or speak up and say something without fear of retribution. You should have formal training for all personnel that should be provided at the beginning of their employment, as well as when they get promoted on, ethics at this level. What are you expected to do, not do, and training, if you will. That way you can hold them accountable. And not only holding them accountable, but you revisit this on an annual basis, because it's always a good refresher or a reminder on what's right, what's wrong, what can be done, and what should be done, and what can't be done. And of course, the company officer should work to create that ethical culture within their crews. So as an officer, you must use ethical decision making when issues arise. Provide a positive example, and the organizational culture will depend on the authority of your own ethical behavior. Now, this goes without saying, first and foremost, the officer must be honest in communicating decisions and the results. By doing this, this builds trust and gains acceptance. And we would be remiss without addressing the golden rule. And this goes from Confucius, but basically, essentially, it is, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. All right, review questions, some food for thought. How do ethics relate to leadership? Okay, our next objective. Describe the roles of supervision and the responsibilities of a company officer. Supervision versus management. Supervision includes the process of directing, overseeing, and controlling the activities of other individuals, where management refers again to the administration and control of projects, programs, situations, or organizations. And the supervisor is anyone who is responsible for the activities of one or more subordinate employees. Training and supervision and management techniques is readily available at seminars, higher educations, and plenty of books out there to read. Most company officers are responsible for supervising the fire company level personnel in small groups. And your experience is gained at this level creates your foundation for being able to supervise and manage larger, more complex groups. And what I mean here is like, you transition from lieutenant to captain to chief, battalion chief, whatever the case may be. So at each level, you're going to inherit more responsibilities. And when you start mastering the basics of one, you start working on growing and being better and increasing your knowledge so you can take those reins of the higher role. All supervisors have specific major responsibilities to an organization regardless of its type. No activity, project, or incident is finished until all assigned tasks have been completed. By accomplishing each of these responsibilities, the company officer can ensure an effective and cohesive unit. As a part of all the responsibilities, company officers must exhibit strong, positive leadership qualities at all times. A company officer must adhere to a standard of ethical, moral, and legal behaviors that motivate subordinates to do the same. Now, the key elements of a successful company officer supervisor style include some of the following. Encourage employee participation in the decision-making process. Delegate or involve members of the unit in planning. Respecting the judgment of employees. Teaching, enforcing, and following health and safety rules. Being a coach and a mentor to all employees. Show consideration for diversity within the unit. And acknowledge accomplishments. Treat each member of the unit fairly and equitably. Refer members to the organization EAP or Employee Assistance Program is usually the most effective method for assisting employees on how to resolve personal problems. Because remember, you're not a psychologist, you're not a counselor, and sometimes they need that extra help, if you will. Keep accurate records. Can't say this enough. Keep accurate records. Documentation is the key, whether it has to do with human resource issues like writing someone up or doing annual evaluations. Keep lines of communication open at all times. Do not allow people to be made uncomfortable or impose upon their dignities. Provide positive motivation for your subordinates at all times. A supervisor must be consistent in meeting the responsibilities. Lack of consistency will undermine your authority and your ability to lead. Inconsistency can create issues within the unit that distract the attention from the primary goal of the organization and take energy, time, effort, and attention to repair. A company officer priorities are based primarily on the services provided and the mission of the organization. Having priorities help the company officer maintain focus on the important activities, manage time more effectively, and direct energy toward the goals and objectives that provide the greatest good for a unit and the community. Also, it minimizes competing priorities to reduce stress and frustration, and it identifies the unit goals and objectives. As a first line supervisor, you should categorize activities into three levels of priority, and that is emergency response, preparation for emergency response, and organizational duties. To meet these priorities, the company officer considers the following preparation activities. So what they're referring to here is indirect preparation for emergency response. And this basically is the company officer must be technically and tactically proficient and ensure the unit members are physically and mentally prepared to respond to an emergency situation during the work shift. You know, is everyone gear in order? Does everyone know how to put it on safely? Things of that nature. So training comes in. You should direct preparation for emergency response. These activities include, as I said, your training and drills. And you should also be able to apply efficient organizational skills. And this category includes, you know, your completion of reports, records, station maintenance, and other administrative duties assigned to the officer. So the company officer who established priorities for personnel and relate those priorities to their job functions are more likely to frame in their expectations clearly to everyone. And company officers who adhere to these priorities set a strong example for members of their unit. As supervisors, the company officer should anticipate problems that may occur and should prepare themselves for finding effective solutions. And such preparation can aid the company officer in brainstorming applicable solutions that can be applied to resolving the problems. So let's start with anticipating problems. A supervisor must recognize a potential problem, then develop an effective and fair solution. So for example, monitoring interaction among unit members is one way to anticipate personnel problems. The company officer should counsel employees when necessary and listen to the concerns and solutions in order to mitigate tension between the members. The supervisor may be familiar with and follow the organizational policies when handling employee problems. And again, these problems may be something that's out of your control, so you may need to refer them to human resources or some sort of EAP or employee assistance program. The supervisor needs to recognize developing situations and attempt to diffuse them before they become a problem. A strong command presence can help the supervisor diffuse the situation quickly and efficiently. Angry or emotional individuals will not hear rational solutions to a problem. So you're going to need to, separate individuals, let them cool down, and let cooler heads prevail. And this is also something for you as well. Sometimes you need to take a step back, collect yourself, think about what's going on, what you're going to say, and what you're going to do. And then once everybody is calmed down, counseling can determine the root cause of the incident and find a solution. Anytime you do counseling, you need to make sure that you have some sort of record of it so it's documented for future use. However, this record needs to be kept confidential in accordance with your organizational policies and procedures. So brainstorming. Understanding the brainstorming process of problem solving ensures that the team does not limit member participation. In a more of a democratic type situation, it's great to get input from all parties. If a suggestion is valid and valuable, public acknowledgement of the contribution is in order. And if it's not, explain privately to the individual why it will not work or it cannot be implemented. So encourage ideas, but if it's something that they're really, harping on, well, you don't want to, shoot them down in front of everybody and make them feel bad, because that's going to limit the brainstorming process. And by not limiting it, you're allowing everyone to get involved. Take into consideration the different thought levels of the people in your group. You have some young people that may be a little familiar with new training techniques, and you may have older people that have better ideas. So again, take all the ideas in and get them together so they can come up with a valid solution to the problem. And this basically is known as group thinking, which is a pattern of thinking that includes self-deception, peer pressure, and conformity to group ethics and values. So you need to guide the group in the right direction so they're just not, fitting in per se. So as a supervisor, you need to be able to communicate your goals and objectives. So a good way to set goals and objectives is using the SMART acronym. So anytime you make an objective, it should be specific. I want X, Y, Z done. It should be measurable. To what degree do you want people to do something? And it needs to be attainable or realistic, relevant. And give some sort of time. So SMART, simple, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time. So the specific goal could be, I want everyone in the crew to have their turnout gear on, breathing air in 2 minutes by the end of next shift. Does that meet all the requirements of a SMART goal? And the answer would be yes. Is it specific? Yes. I want everyone to have all gear on, breathing air within 2 minutes. Is it measurable? Absolutely. Have everyone do the drill, time them, and make sure it's all put on correctly and breathing air. Is it attainable? Absolutely. Is it relevant and realistic? Well, yes. In that instance, I do believe so. And is there a time frame constructed? Yes, there is by the end of the next shift. So when you're doing these goals and objectives, it must be communicated quickly, efficiently to your subordinates. And the subordinates must be able to understand the intent of it. So it could be the goal of this objective for you guys is so we can lessen our out of shoot time. And that's why we're doing it. And then you want to, give progress reports or feedback to help the group more effectively provide incentives to fulfill the active. So, the old adage bribery, right? Oh, hey, if everybody gets this done, I'll buy ice cream after, dinner or whatever the case may be. Okay, there are 3 ways to which to involve employees with these established goals and objectives. First, require employees to accomplish the specific task, and supervisors know best practices and has all the information necessary. Make sure the employees are trained for said task. And then you need to be able to delegate tasks. Employee select method, which is basically, hey, make the, driver responsible and give them the authority and confidence in doing what they need to do. So you again are not being held to micromanage this specific task or objective. And of course, the third way of involving employees is use the democratic leadership principle. The unit has the opportunity to establish goals and objectives during planning. So this could be saying, okay, guys, we need to talk about our out of shoot time. I've noticed that it's gotten a little, slower than average, or A shift or C shift is a bit faster out of the chute, or the next due engine company is beating us into our assigned area. So how are we going to improve ourselves so we're not coming in second? And that's a way to get everybody involved so they can help come up with the problem, the solution, and how to effectively get there. So you get that buy-in from individuals. And that's with anything. When you get buy-in from your people, it makes the job a lot easier because they're going to want to do it. They believe in what they're doing and they know why. Effective supervision also means building an effective team. And when we're looking at an effective team, that includes, personnel, equipment, and things of that nature. And as people get promoted and come in and out of a group, the team dynamics are going to change. So, here's some basic principles on creating an effective team. First, keep your people informed. Let them know what is going on and what the objectives are and how to accomplish the objectives. Have frequent meetings with the team to determine the progress of what's going on and where the plan is, and explain, hey, we're going to have to change things up, so we're going to deviate for, this reason, and resolve any problems anybody has. And of course, also with that, celebrate accomplishments when check marks and things are done off the list. Of course, establishing goals and encouraging team members to contribute to suggestions and solutions. Now, there is a 4-stage development model for becoming a cohesive team. And the first phase, and it's important to note that individual groups can kind of go through the phases in different time frames. So the first is forming. And forming has to do with the uncertainty of own roles and others within the group. So in this phase, you're throwing a group of new people together. Maybe it's promotion, maybe it's that fruit basket turnover where you're putting new officers with new drivers and firefighters. And in forming, trust and respect will begin to grow and should be seen as the group. With the forming, you need to have enthusiasm about challenges. And during this forming group, the officer can have a significant effect on the demeanor of the group. And you need to kind of be molding and guiding in the formation of the group as everyone is kind of jockeying for position. And that takes us to the storming phase, where you may have those informal leaders or, conflict arising saying, oh, hey, they're more experienced or I'm more experienced, et cetera, for those informal leaders. And during this jockeying for position phase or the storming phase, it's critical as a leader to kind of reduce the time as much as possible where everyone knows their roles. So kind of dictating or assigning things as you get to know who's better at what. That way people begin to know their place within the group. And once that begins to happen, then you start having the norming phase. So the team sets their own norms, people start knowing their job, they become a more closer, cohesive group. And the company officer is now aware of the norms and knows who can kind of do what. And then you have that leader transition into the role of being a team member, which allow other team members to share in leadership responsibilities. So this is kind of preparing for that next level of supervision or advancement for your people. So again, we kind of start with forming the group, we're jockeying for position. Everybody begins knowing their roles. Then it becomes second nature, and everybody kind of knows everything. And now you kind of take a step back and you allow individuals to kind of grow. And then you transition into performing. And once they're performing, that's basically mean, hey, everybody knows their roles. We're all getting along. We're all firing on all cylinders. And it's up to you, the supervisor, to maintain the group spirit and accomplishment toward objectives and goals. And again, once they've started accomplishing goals and tasks, it's always good to lay out new goals, new objectives once things are met. And of course, give rewards and accolations to individuals in the group as they accomplish different tasks. Okay, what are some ways to move through the four-stage process as smoothly as possible? As we talked a little bit about earlier, a leader is able to motivate and support personnel and can involve a number of different strategies to do this. So one being is empowering employees, which is a requirement of a supervisor. It increases self-image and productivity, and delegation can have its benefits. So empower employees to get the job done. Increase their self-image and productivity by giving them, accolades and things of that nature. So once you give them a task, you let them do it, you don't micromanage them, and then once things get done, then you can kind of fall into reward, so to speak. And there's all kind of things out there. Usually you're not going to get raises and monetary awards unless your department has incentives for additional certifications and things of that nature. So it's critical of the company officer to acknowledge accomplishments and give rewards as soon as possible once individuals make these goals and objectives. And of course, rewarding can be something as simple as I said earlier, ice cream or, whatever the case may be, or, at the end of the year, hey, here's a little gift from me just to say thank you for all your guys' hard work. Now, sometimes when you're dealing with employees and you're motivating, you may need to coach or counsel them. So let's kind of run through that right quick. And coaching employees is a way to give motivational direction and give positive reinforcement and constructive feedback. And the feedback needs to be, positive and immediate. It needs to be direct and frequent. You're letting them know where they're at, what's going on. You're doing a good job or you're not doing a good job. And this teaches and directs subordinates through that, encouragement and advice. And this will help the subordinate obtain established goals. And it also determines how for them to reach it and provide suggestions to them when they're kind of stumbling. Telling subordinates what and how to do is less effective and takes less responsibility for the process. So basically, give them ideas and kind of, let them figure it out works better. That way they have ownership in it. And then give them feedback. Now, if they ask for it, hey, I don't know how to do this, then of course help them. Now we have counseling employees, and this can be good or bad, but counseling employees is a formal process which assists in identifying and resolving personal, behavioral, and career problems affecting performance. Now with counseling, this is something that should be like a time session in the sense of periodic or before promotional exams or when they're doing something unacceptable. With counseling, you should always, counsel in private and of course praise in public. You should follow whatever your organizational policy and procedures are, and you should be familiar with any labor management agreements or union rules. Or, there may be some sort of grievance process that, the employee may be able to file. So there's a 4-step method for counseling, and the first step is describe the current performance. And this should be done in kind of a positive manner. And state what the required behavior expectations are and explain why or what they're doing is unacceptable or insufficient, and give specific examples. Then, describe the desired performance. Detail, hey, this is what I want you to do, and give them clear direction on how to get there. And after that, here's the really hard one. Gain a commitment for change from the employee. Ask the employee, do they agree to this new level of performance? Step 4, always follow up on the commitment. Observe the employees, monitor sessions, check in to see if change is occurring. And if occurring unacceptable behavior does keep coming up to the surface, then you may need to start following your organization's policy on some sort of disciplinary action. Another tool in the toolbox is mentoring employees, and this could be yourself or assigning one of their peers that's, senior, that you trust and know they do the action that you want done and they do it effectively. So you have that mentor, and this is a positive role model to have them better prepare for the roles and responsibilities. And this mentor is someone that's going to assist in gaining specialized training, maybe provide guidance, and provide outsized resources to that individual. With mentoring, it can be someone that's just monitoring achievements of the sport and encourage, diversity in training. So it's that person that kind of takes them under their wing and helps guide them to accomplish the end goals. Now, even though you may be assigning a mentor, you as a supervisor must make yourself available to the subordinate seeking guidance and counseling. And of course, once they begin to meet these benchmarks, acknowledge their accomplishment as soon as possible. Signal the completion of the project, show members of the unit that their contributions are important, and announce to the organization that, hey, so-and-so is doing a great job, they got this done by XYZ, and, praise them. And of course, you don't want to praise them every single day. Oh, hey, you tied your shoes, congratulations. But, every once in a while, acknowledge that they're doing a good job. That way it keeps them motivated. Now, if you're praising them every time you turn around, then it loses some of the meaning, some of the value. Okay, what are some examples of effective motivation? A Level 1 fire officer may be required to manage a single company incident or project and should be familiar with basic management principles. The Level 1 fire officer should be prepared to manage multi-company instances before the arrival of a Level 2 fire officer. As a supervisor, the company officer must be able to apply proven management principles, and these principles are based on management theories that have been developed, applied, and validated over the past centuries. Managing is the process of controlling or directing your available resources for the purpose of achieving a goal or objective through the use of authority or persuasion. A effective company officer must be aware of relevant management functions and develop and refine skills necessary to carry out those functions. All organizational personnel bear some responsibility for achievement of the organizational goals and objectives. As a supervisor, the company officers are directly responsible for the effective and efficient use of resources under their command. The primary resources provided by the taxpayers through political and economical support are generally considered to be personnel, facilities, apparatus, tools, equipment, and legal jurisdiction, or basically your authority. Now, NFPA 1021, it's the standard for Fire Officer 1 and 2, uses the term management in conjunction with Level 1 and 2 Fire Officer responsibilities, such as information management, incident management, and human resources management. Even though the standard defines the Level 1 officer as a supervisor and the Level 2 officer, meaning Fire Officer 2, as a manager, it is essential for both Level 1 and Level 2 officers to fully understand the theories and methods used in the act of managing. And in this next section, it's going to provide the company officer with a basic knowledge of the management functions, the skills required to be an effective manager, and the planning function. The company officer must realize that management, like leadership and supervision, is a broad topic. And there's a lot of ideas and information out there on how to be an effective manager. Now, management involves four main functions, and that is planning, organization, directing, and controlling. Planning encompasses the broadest view of the organization, and the narrowest organization is the coordinating task and resources to accomplish unit goals and objectives. Directing, that is guiding, influencing, inspiring, and motivating employees to achieve the goals and objectives within the group. Directing is a proactive approach to managing as the company officer applies the concepts of leading and supervising. Finally, we have controlling, which is establishing and implementing the mechanisms to ensure that objectives are attained. This includes setting performance standards, measuring and reporting the actual performance, comparing the performance standard with actual performance, and preventing or correcting actions to close the gap between the two levels of performance. Now, these four functions are essential to the management of any fire emergency service organization. And you, as the company officer, must develop these skills necessary to apply relative functions to the duties assigned to you during both your emergency and non-emergency scenes. Okay, as a company officer, there are three main skill sets that you really need to work on and continue to develop. And the first being is your administrative skill, and the second is human and communication skills, and the third is basically your decision-making skills. Now, with administrative skills, these are methods and techniques required to perform your task, your job, such as, computer skills, knowledge of laws, labor agreements, report writing, data analysis, budgets, reports, and things of that nature. So these are all tools that help you effectively manage an incident and applying your strategies and tactics to concepts and situations. Next is that human and communication skill, that interpersonal skill that includes your ability to work with other people and supervise your subordinates. And success or failure often hinges on your ability to communicate effectively. Finally, the conceptual and decision-making skill is that skill that includes the ability to understand abstract ideas and solve problems. It is also the ability to understand the organization as a whole and recognize how the various parts are interrelated. So let's look at planning right quick. Planning determines in advance what an organization, a group, or an individual should do and how it will get done. It is the foundation of the management process. While chief officers and administrative staff develop your formal organizational plan, it is your job, the company officer, must plan on how to implement these things. Of course, now planning should be documented in a timely manner. The documentation provides evidence of the decisions that were made and serves as a guideline for further planning should the results of the planning fail to meet your required goals. The documentation will assist in determining why the plans need to be altered and how to do it. You, the company officer, must know the organizational plans and how the planning process works and how to apply it to your level and the processes for altering existing plans. Now, plans are generally classified based on the frequency with which they are used, and there are two broad categories that are established, and the first is standing plans and single-use plans, and these plans may also be subcategorized as strategic, tactical, operational, administrative, and contingencies. So looking at these, first being standing, and these are your policies, procedures, and rules for any kind of given emergency or non-emergency situations. Now this helps ensure the consistency and the equal application of authority while defining responsibilities for ones within the organization. Next, we have single use, and this is designed to accomplish a specific objective, such as development of a program, a project, or a budget. Now, these plans are usually intended to reach an objective within a short period of time. Next, you have strategic, and this is something that is more like over an unidentified future, and it's divided into definitive time components. So this may be something like, okay, we want all our engines to be advanced cardiac life support or ACLS by 3 years down the road, and then you'll have little sub plans or like those single-use plans to meet this overall strategic objective. Like, okay, everyone be trained in CPR by month 2, everyone be trained in ACLS by month 3, have all the equipment on the truck by month 4, have protocol review month 5, or whatever the case may be. So that's an example of your strategic overall plan. Next, you have your operational and administrative, and this focuses on how objectives will be accomplished. They deal with those factors that are within the control of the organization, and they are fact-based, while strategic plans are subjective. So, this is kind of how are we going to meet this overall goal. And then, of course, contingency plan. Hey, if something screws up or it ain't going right, this is our plan B for any unforeseen events. Now, task management. The company officer is responsible for completing the task or ensuring that the delegated tasks have been completed. Again, you can't do everything yourself, so you need to empower the authority to people underneath you or delegate to them the task to be done. You give them authority to do the job, but ultimately the responsibility comes back on you. Now, a good way to ensure that tasks are being completed is establish and communicate a plan for task completion. Ensure that the schedule is realistic with the attainable objectives, and organize the employees to work as a team and focus on the overall goal. Again, delegate responsibility and authority to give a sense of ownership and evaluate the quality and the completion of the task. And in this, there's a little blurb here that I do want to read. It's on page 77. It's key order definition. And it is a PERT chart. And this stands for Program or Project Evaluation and Review Technique. And this is a statistic tool used in project management that is designed to analyze and represent the task involving completion of a given project. Essentially, this is just a formal check sheet or way to ensure that these more complex tasks or tools are being done. Okay, let's summarize. The company officer must understand the management principles and apply supervisory skills to their greatest advantage. Developing a team atmosphere and applying leadership skills create an effective, efficient, and cohesive unit. Leadership based on the organizational policies and accepted ethical values build trust and respect. The management principles will help officers reach this goal. Okay, gang, so if you haven't already, make sure you read Chapter 3. There are review questions in Blackboard for you to go ahead and get knocked out for this week. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me at aroberts@athenstech.edu or give me a call in the office at 706-357-0162. And until next time, be safe and have a great day.